right, good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, November 4th, 2025. It's election day. It's post-Dodgers World Series championship. Because it's election day, we're going to aim to keep this brief so that folks can get out to vote if you haven't done so already. I want to note that there will be no disruptions allowed during this meeting. That includes disruptive noises and gestures that impede this committee's work. Let's begin. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Yaroslavsky.
Here.
Blumenfeld.
Present.
Hutt.
Here.
McOsker.
Here in the back.
Hernandez.
Present.
4 ayes, quorum is present, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Bencomo. We have a quorum. Colleagues, we have 27 items on the agenda, including 20 closed session items. We'll do closed session consent once we are in closed session. I recommend approving the following open session items on consent: 2 through 7 and 8 through 20. What are you doing? Sorry, what? Okay, we're going to do closed session consent items here. So I recommend the following items on consent: 2 through 7 and items 8 through 26 for closed session on consent. Colleagues, any items to pull from the consent? Yes.
Chairwoman, I'd like to request that we take up item 5 with the FSR because I have questions about that money transfer, and I would also like a separate vote on item 5.
I'm sorry, can you say that last part again?
And I would also like a separate vote on item 5.
Okay. Any other items to pull from consent, colleagues? Okay. We're going to hear item 1 first, then item 5, and item 6, and then we'll move into our close. Do you have anything to pull?
No.
Okay. And then we'll move into our closed session items. So we're going to move on now to public comment. Mr. Whitley, would you please read the instructions on how to give public comment for today's meeting?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. To people providing public comment, you will have 2 minutes to comment on today's agenda items and 1 minute of general public comment. We will tell you when your time is up. When speaking on today's agenda items, you must be on topic. Our goal is to get through as many speakers as we can. If you are not on topic, you will get 1 brief warning from me or the chair. At that point, you need to immediately and clearly return to topic, and if you do not do so, you will forfeit the rest of your speaking time, and we will move on to the next speaker. When it is your turn to speak at the podium, please state which of today's agenda items you'd like to speak to. Madam Chair, please call the speakers.
Okay. I'm going to call a bunch of names all at once. If you can make your way, if you're able, to this side. It doesn't matter that you come up in the order in which you were called. Amy, Scientology. Manny, Arturo, Duarte, Good. Marco, Reedy, Audit LA, Lara FM, Maria Gomez, and Michael Ackerman. And those are all the names I have. So if I didn't call your name and you'd like to come up to speak, please line up. On my right, your left. Okay.
Sorry, fighting over. Okay, good afternoon. I want all items, like I said, I want all the minutes, in other words. So it's what, 3 total? 2. Hello? It's 3 total?
You have 2 minutes to comment on agenda items and 1 minute to comment on general public matters.
Okay, because sometimes Bob changes the rules, so I never know what they are from day to day, but okay, thank you, sir. All right, let's start with number 4, okay? When it comes to the Department of Aging, I want them to get grant funds to help the elderly. But I've been coming here for how long to tell you that there are elderly not being treated very well by Scientology, okay? They do not believe, Scientology does not believe in any kind of psychiatric care, any kind of mental health help, and sometimes with aging, you need that kind of help. They also don't believe in really any kind of medical help. If you're sick, it's your fault. You have to figure out why you brought on your sickness. And this is with cancer, okay? Anything, heart disease, anything, diabetes. You have to figure out why you are sick. It could be from your past life, whatever. So there's no real medical treatment. And if they do give you medical treatment, it's going to be with a chiropractor. So So I hope that some of this fund money gets to them and that they get help, and you would look into what we've been telling you. Okay, number 5, okay. A week or so ago, you guys were taking money from LAFD to give it to Medicaid, okay? I'm all for Medicaid being funded, but not for LAFD money. Like, what the heck? Bob, what are you doing? Like, seriously, or Ms. Chair, like, what are you doing with that? That's crazy. Okay, because, you know, like, we need our firefighters, we need them fully, they don't even have what they need. They had to do bake sales, and that's the other one here. Bake sales to keep the fire department running. You should be ashamed, you should be embarrassed that our firefighters have to have bake sales to fund their thing, because you're taking all their money from them, Bob. It's horrible. And now, when issues I do have with LAFD are personal, it has to do with the one right around the Scientology building, but we'll keep that private because I am fully supporting LAFD, and we will discuss that business at the Fire Commission, okay? Because I love my firefighters. I appreciate y'all. Y'all are heroes. Don't let Bob and Katie and all them, and you know, and I bet it's not Mr. McCosker, it's everyone else. They're trying to take your money, but they're giving it to LAPD, okay? No offense, LAPD, but keep it with LA. All right. So you know why I'm here. I'm here about, Scientology. Okay, we had yet another permit, which I keep telling you, they never abide by any of them. There was 0 fire lane, 0, not even to zigzag in, and there's a lot of kids. Okay, and they kept, like, these little kids that the parents didn't want to sign up and give them their information, they were kicked out. So this little kid, 3 years old, has to cry, sitting there crying, looking why he can't get in. Well, because they didn't want to, their mom, rightfully so, didn't want to give personal information. Laura FM also got assaulted by a child Scientologist. And the police came to deal with it also because they were trying to prevent any pedestrians from going through, which it's illegal. They cannot do that. So the police came and did the right thing, but their security guards rushed the kid inside, and that's obstruction of justice. I wish you guys would get this under control, okay? It's out of control at this point, and I will yield my time. Thank you.
Good morning, all items. Thank you very much, every single Democrats council members. Let's start with item number 5. It's about the overtime fund for the LAPD. We already know that since the beginning of the George Floyd looting and rioting, we lost more than 2,500 of the police officers. So right now, the only thing we can do to make sure either is the homeless housing site or maybe any city, any division, any bureau safe is we have no any other choice but other than using the overtime fund. Other than to provide more overtime for the police officers. It doesn't matter, right here on the item number 5, we're talking specifically talking about homeless housing overtime, LAPD, but I'm actually more concerned about whenever there's a major looting, rioting, major protesting, so I think we have a million different areas that where we need LAPD, so every time I call 911, I don't have to wait for 30 minutes for someone, sometimes they never even show up. Now let's move on to item number 7. Item number 7 is my favorite council member Hernandez talking about tax relief program for all of the cannabis businesses. Sergeant Duarte used to told me that stay away from cannabis, stay away from the drugs, stay away from the marijuana. Oh, if you want to be a safe driver, stay away from it. But right now, our council member Hernandez is trying to make sure that you have no tax selling cannabis. And then, so in the future, that means more and more customers are going to purchase cannabis. So what are we going to do? Sergeant Duarte will pull over more drug-related driving violations. And then drug driver, what's that called? DUI driver, or impaired driver, they're gonna kill more lives. They're gonna kill more officers. They're gonna kill more pedestrians. Going back to our budget about overtime fund LAPD, that our city is in a dangerous environment. We are in a very dangerous condition. Officer Sabra has to call a day off work because he cannot deal with the looter and rioter. He got injured for himself dealing with the Dodger protest. You call it a parade. I call it a looter, rioter, all those civil unrest nonsense. So many officers, like Officer Sabra, they even have to take a day off because they cannot handle those violent protesters anymore. So we definitely need, every time we are dealing with the protesters, we need the National Guard, we need the sheriff, we need the CHP, we need, all other departments, because you do not have enough officers. You need to find every single opportunity you can to fund more LAPD overtime, because our city lost 3,000 officers. Our citizens cannot get enough LAPD officers. We need every single LAPD overtime.
Are you ready? Test, test. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm right here, Lady Yorwalski. I'm talking on item number 4, the goddamn ACLU for the civil rights and the civil equity of immigration, in which Imelda Padilla and Alex Padilla like corruption, like immigrants, and like illegals getting free shit. I don't approve of it, but you asshole Californians behind me and besides me and all around me understand that you're paying for this shit. I'm right here, jackass. You see me? Hi. So, yeah, now that I got your attention, you dumbass, regarding public safety and immigration, Alex Padilla, Imelda Padilla, these fucking criminals like Miss Hamburger Hernandez over there believe that illegal immigrants is the right way of corruption in California, like that Newscomb asshole that you people voted on item vote no on 50. It's so true, but again, Bob Bloomfield, the story I've been hearing is whether or not you're having an affair is none of my business, but the public has a right to know, Bob. So if you are, please suck on that straw 2 times and let us know it's true. Because, the only thing you'll be sucking in jail is the FBI's report against you. Now, let me go into the other items, Bob. There's like over 20 items on illegal cases, but I'm going to read this one into the record. El Monte Flores gang member was all captured by a plaintiff via her cell phone, video, and audio. This is similar to the Cudahy Florencia gangs in the issue in the case number 223CV02427 for the record, Bob. Now we're going to see what the FBI does to investigate this. Now into my non-agenda public comment. You see, the great America is doomed. Nebuchadnezzar did not learn, Bob. He took the Jews' jewelry. He destroyed your Israel Gothic building, and he ravaged it until God told him, you will walk the earth like an animal, Nebuchadnezzar. And he did, Bob. He learned a valuable lesson. Corruption. You will not honor 2 gods, but only honor I, Bob. I, a motherfucking God, with my loud voice, with my vulgar, venomous speech, Bob, gets everyone's motherfucking attention, Bob. And now, Yorwalski, you know who the true God is. Yahweh. Yahweh's going to bring your corruption to an end soon. And you will be like Nebuchadnezzar's son, a piece of worthless shit, for the record.
Hands down or you're out. Last warning. I'm talking to Herman, and this is the last warning. If there's any more gestures, you're out. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please go ahead.
Okay, hi. I'm talking about the infiltration of Scientology, and I specifically just wanted to really bring up for the Budget and the Finance Committee, the individuals who are part of this board, please, can you please just check in with your friends and your local coworkers if they are connected in any way with Scientology. The money coming from or to Scientology for any infiltration, city programs, anything like this, is coming from a corrupt, disgusting organization that abused children, still abusing children through auditing. They traffic humans all over the world. Other people from other countries being run on the R1 visa to get people into Scientology's cults. So please, as a financial person, please be aware. If you have a friend that you're like, oh, I think they're a Scientologist, it's not that they're a bad person. It's about allowing the organization to get away with what they're getting away with. That causes this fear by the city. They think they can't do anything to stop them. We've had many permits. Every permit that Scientology is given is violated every single time. Nobody does anything about it. This last Halloween permit, there were multiple things that happened. Nobody did anything. Please stop any connections with any Scientology identities, anything, because it is human trafficking support. You're supporting a human trafficking organization.
The worst abuse that police can commit is intentionally disregarding an alleged crime. If someone ever tries to convince you that it's acceptable for an officer not to record and seriously investigate an allegation, then you are being set up. This type of abuse is rampant. For some crimes, it's obvious if they aren't being addressed. For others, like extortion, there's no evidence at all. If someone is threatened with violence, if they make a police report, then they won't go to the police. The police chief can then report a comparatively low crime rate despite the high rate of extortion. The only way that this can be addressed is with a high level of police oversight. It's simple enough for you to ask the governor for a military level investigation of possible misconduct, but officials like you haven't done it, even though it will cost taxpayers nothing. I suggest you do it for your own credibility, if not for the public's protection. Thank you.
Okay, I see no more speakers in the queue. We're going to close public comment for these items. We're ready to vote on the consent items. I understand my colleague, Mr. Blumenfield, would like to hear item 15 in closed session, so we'll pull that from consent. Consent is now items 2 through 4 and 7, and 18 through 14, 16 through 26 for closed session. I move approval of those items with the following instructions. For item 2, concur with the Transportation Committee recommendations. Item 3, concur with the Government Operations Committee. Item 4, concur with the Civil Rights, Equity, Immigration, Aging, and Disability Committee. Item 7, concur with the Government Operations Committee. Mr. Bencomo, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Yes.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Aye.
Councilmember Hutt.
Yes.
Councilmember McOsker.
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Yes.
5 ayes, these items are approved.
Thank you. So now we're going to move to item 5. Councilwoman Hernandez, did you want to speak to that item or just call for a separate vote?
Well, I wanted to call it with the FSR because it's about that money transfer. So do we have to do it separate, or can we just have them both at the same time? For item 5.
So item,
Okay, well, I have
it's
questions
okay,
for item 5.
we'll hold it
Okay.
for after the FSR.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Great. So let's move to item 1, which is the first financial status report. Mr. Wexler, would you please read the item?
Item 1, City Administrative Officer Report relative to the first financial status report for fiscal year 25-26.
Thank you. I'd like to invite staff from the CAO's office to please come to the table. Yeah, so before, just for folks who are here, the departments that I'm going to ask questions of, and we'll just go around, I'd like City Attorney, LAPD, and LAFD. Anybody have additional? Councilmember Blumenfield.
I would add Streets LA, DOT. Finance, personnel, with CAO, of course.
Councilwoman Hutt or Hernandez? No additional? Okay, so if we haven't called your name, thank you for being here. All right, Mr. Zabo, do you want to go ahead and give us a brief presentation?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I will make just very brief remarks to introduce the first financial status report. The report you have before you provides our first of four snapshots into the city's financial position. Currently, the city is in a manageable financial position, which is an improvement compared to this same period last year. However, we are facing multiple pressures and risks that could cause increased challenges as the year progresses. As it relates to the top line numbers, we're reporting overspending at a project 263 million. We have identified potential solutions to address 183 million of this potential 263 million overspending, with 80 million left unresolved. Revenues are currently $80 million above plan. That is partially related to delayed receipts. Again, I need to caution on this front. This is very, very early in the fiscal year. It is better to be above plan than below plan, but it is too early to make any kind of conclusions as to where revenue will head. There continue to be downside risks on property tax, TOT, due to economic uncertainty, and also with departmental receipts. As it relates to the reserve fund, we began the year just slightly below our 5% policy level. We began the year at 4.91%. We had projected in the adopted budget 5.13%. We are recommending $10 million in this FSR to increase the reserve fund balance to 5.04% to comply with the policy minimum. As it relates to the takeaways, as we are looking not just to manage this current fiscal year and this budget, but as we prepare for fiscal 26-27, it is essential that we control spending this year, that we implement the budget and we implement the reductions as proposed. The reserve fund is the only current backstop for the 80 million in unresolved overspending and any downside revenue risk. Some of the overspending, by the way, is due to the layoff abeyance agreements that cover the now remaining 275 positions that have been eliminated but still have employees in the substitute authorities. So two things will need to happen. We absolutely need to continue moving the employees that are currently in those substitute authorities into fully funded vacant positions as they arise, either through either within the departments that they are currently situated or through transfers. We also will need to fully implement the labor agreements that allowed for that abeyance to take place in the first place. That includes unpaid holidays, which would be enacted beginning in January of 2026. And we need to implement the agreement with the Police Protective League, which is still experiencing some implementation difficulties. At this point, although it is very, very early, very, very early as it relates to revenue. There's continued uncertainty in the economy. It is a concern that the 26-27 revenues will support the average growth in next year's budget. So it is critical that we implement the budget and that we resist any additional spending as we proceed through this year. So as it relates to some of the recommendations, in addition to the multiple adjustments that we're recommending in the report, we are also recommending that the council instruct departments to refrain from submitting interim budget requests and requests for reserve fund loans. and that the council instruct departments to retain savings from unpaid holidays to be available for transfer to departments that have employees whose layoffs are delayed. So that will be important. The unpaid holidays, the savings is for covering the layoff abeyance. And lastly, what I do want to just mention that we are in the middle of preparing to issue significant debt for the convention center expansion project. We have gone out to the rating agencies. We have received initial indications that 2 of the major rating agencies will affirm the city's current ratings, which is positive, but we are remaining on negative outlook. On the positive side, we have received indication that the city's budgetary actions to close the structural deficit this last year for the fiscal 26 budget were seen as positives, including very specifically the elimination of the positions, the 1,600 positions, the increase in the solid waste fees to reduce the general fund subsidies, and the increase to the liability claims account to more accurately reflect anticipated liabilities. However, they have also indicated challenges and concerns related to long-term structural balance. They have indicated that it is that the draws on the reserve fund in fiscal 24-25, softening revenue trends, increased personnel costs, and increased litigation risks are all areas of concern. And the recommendations that they have made in affirming our current ratings are consistent with those that this office has consistently made over time. We need to continue on our multi-year effort to restore the reserve fund above the 5% level. We will continue to recommend that. City departments must absorb and manage remaining costs within existing funds and retain projected surpluses. And we should resist and discourage any interim funding requests as we proceed through the fiscal year. With that, we'll open it up for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a few questions for the CAO, and then colleagues, I'm going to turn it over to you to ask questions of the CAO, and then we'll go into each department, ask all of our questions of that department, and then move on to the next department. Does that sound all right? So before, I just want to make a brief statement. I want to thank the CAO for the list of unfunded requests that are compiled in the report. I think we're missing a few, but we're going to get to that in our discussion. I want to underscore how important this exercise is. The CAO's list of unfunded requests already identifies 29 pending requests for additional funding that would raise our year-end overspending without a clear funding solution to approximately $130.4 million. This committee asked for the inclusion of this list in the FSR for a reason. In this financial climate, it's really important that we have a clear picture of all the unfunded or partially funded requests that council is making. These one-off actions may seem minor in isolation, but together they add up quickly. And again, we're already looking at $130.4 million in things that we have brought motions asking to be funded for which we have no funding source. Colleagues, we remain in a zero-sum game where every motion that requests new funding has to take those resources from somewhere else. And so I'm really glad that we're tracking it. And so we can collectively determine how to prioritize any new spending not already budgeted for in this year. In the same vein, I want to flag the 4-year outlook included in the FSR. While it shows projected surpluses in the coming years, it does not account for several major fiscal pressures on the horizon, including the recently approved Convention Center project, whose debt payments begin in FY 28-29, future labor contracts across multiple bargaining units, pending ballot initiatives that could significantly negatively impact general fund revenue, and potential major infrastructure projects or preparations for the 28 games. It also doesn't contemplate the possibility of a recession, which the CAO notes in this FSR has a 33% probability within the next 12 months. The assumptions in the outlook are built on optimistic growth projections, and we should not view this as a sign that the storm clouds are parting anytime soon. it represents in many cases a best-case scenario, and so, colleagues, I hope we treat it that way. Just a couple of questions for you, Mr. Szabo. Could you detail why we're in a better fiscal position right now than we were at this time last year? Generally speaking.
Generally speaking, we are in a better position as it relates to our revenues are ahead of schedule. We were slightly ahead of schedule last year as it relates to our expenditures. We are in a better position as it relates to liability claims. We are in a more manageable position as it relates to the solutions that we have identified thus far.
Just to add, Madam Chair, it was in significant part due to the structural changes made in the budget. You look at like the liability claims increase of 100 million. As well, looking at the mid-year reserve, we have substantially more budgeted than we had in prior years, which of course reduces our unsolved $80 million amount, or reduces it to that amount. In prior years, that amount was significantly smaller.
Right. Okay. So as we talked about, the four-year outlook is positive. What risk factors did the CAO's office utilize to anticipate a balance and surplus in the next 4 years?
The risk factors?
In making I mean, because you determined that we're going to have big surpluses in 4 years, and I'm wondering sort of what assumptions were built into that.
So it is important to understand that the assumptions in the four-year outlook, a four-year outlook essentially takes a snapshot of where we are, and it does not assume that there will be increases or expansion of services, and it does assume that the cuts that were made in these last 2 years would remain. So the risk to the surpluses, in addition to the knowns, and we did report, for example, that the additional that the debt service required by the convention center would reduce the surplus in fiscal 28-29 by $43 million, and by fiscal 29-30 by 112 or nearly $113 million. Certainly the risks that exist would be any future labor deals. Most of our labor agreements expire in fiscal 27, some in 28. Any additional increases beyond the 2% level would certainly affect that. Any additional hiring, expanded restoration of positions, or any additional positions, that is not accounted for in the four-year outlook, and that would present risk to those surpluses. We are also not projecting a recession, and it's very important that because we are in a relatively stable position. I say relatively stable, it doesn't mean that there's no risk. There's clearly risk. If we were to experience a recession, then it would dramatically change what the outlook would show. So we will be presenting another outlook with the next proposed budget, but certainly any downturn in the economy, the revenue risks that we've already identified, expenditure risk for sure, if there is effort to restore any of the reductions, add back positions, or not to implement the reductions that are included in this budget, that would all have a negative effect on our outlook.
Okay. In the next FSR, will there be an updated four-year outlook that reflects more recently adopted city contracts and obligations like the convention center? Because that's going to potentially be a significant impact to our four-year forecast.
So we typically,
at least in the out years.
Certainly, we typically don't publish a new outlook until the proposed budget. So our typical process would be to publish a new outlook in April based on the proposed budget and the assumptions contained therein. We did report in this FSR, as I said, the known impact of the convention center, which we've reported here in our official statements. So that is the one area where we would have a known adjustment. Beyond that, we would typically wait until we have a whole set of new assumptions with the proposed budget.
Okay. How do we account for future labor contracts when we do future budgeting if we're not including them in the 4-year outlook? How do we think about that? And how are you thinking about that as you put together, say, next year's budget?
So we have included in our base assumptions in the outlook, we assume a 2% increase for payroll. As it relates to our future labor agreements, obligations that we don't yet have, it is, it's a tough call to make, because on one side, I would not recommend that we include in our outlook, we're going to
Assumptions.
probably give 4 or 5%. We should not include that in our assumptions, because we should not be giving that level of increase. I think including a 2% increase is appropriate for long-term projections. And if we are in a position or if there is a need to provide more than that in specific circumstances that warrants it, then that is a decision that needs to be made against other priorities that the city has.
So the 4-year projected includes 2% per year for
Correct.
those 4 years and nothing beyond that? Okay.
2% after the expiration.
Of
So
the
it includes
contract.
all the increases that have currently been agreed to. When those expire, then it goes to 2%.
Okay, that makes sense. I have a bunch more questions about other areas for the CAO, including FEMA and infrastructure, but want to open it up to others. Councilmember Blumenfield?
Sure, thank you. Appreciate the report and all the work that you guys do. I am not as optimistic about where we are, though, financially. I mean, in terms of the 2% labor thing, obviously that's going to be higher. We're suffering from essentially a negative vacancy rate because we have more people on the books than we're assuming to some extent if we're not going to keep people. And then this budget, we don't assume any restoration and services, right? So we're assuming flat services, which at the moment is literally no resurfacing of streets, except for large asphalt repairs and things, and that's true in that department, but in other departments across the way, and that's not sustainable. Like, we can't keep this low level of service without either the city crumbling or the liabilities increasing. So all that's to say, I guess I don't need to make a big speech or ask any questions about that aspect of it, but I'm very skeptical of the rosy outlook, even though, and I know you're very sober about it and you do a great job of putting it all together. I just putting it out there that and the convention center, and I feel like we are in a worse position now than we were last year because we've already cut to the bone all of our labor costs, so that all the cushion that we had is gone. So I'm just very worried about where we're moving, but that is what it is. So I just wanted to put that out there. And then just a general question, the only bright spot, to some extent, the library has a big budget of $25 million surplus because of Measure L. Is there any way that we could use some of this money to rebuild the Pacific Palisades Library and take that off the books with the library money? I know that one of the reasons why I hate ballot box budgeting is because of this very scenario where departments get skewed in terms of the money that they have versus vis-a-vis relative to the rest of the city. But this is just a narrow question, which is, since they do have a surplus and we do have a very, very clear library need in the Palisades, is there a way to make that work?
CAO, we are reaching out to the departments to start looking at the timelines for the restorations of those projects like the library, which I would expect will be actually built by BOE. but we need the timing and to better determine what level of funding is needed to complete the project, and then assess how much of that savings could come from library or from other sources.
But it could come,
I'm saying,
would you tell me that there is a way that we could use that surplus? I don't need to know all the numbers at this point, but.
I don't either. I don't know what surplus there is. I would have to talk with the library department and with the budget analyst, like how real that surplus is, what could we do with it, and whether or not, but we certainly could look at that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilwoman Hernandez, and then Councilmember McCosker.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, Matt and team, for being here today. Can you please explain how there are so many over expenditures due to personnel that have been eliminated? Is this what you're talking about, that we have people that are not on our books but that are costing us money? Can you give me a little more clarity on how that's happened? And just to make sure that I understand, that it accounts for tens of millions in overages in various departments, such as General Services, LAPD. I would like to know how that wasn't accounted for, or how we got here to this point. Thank you.
Go ahead. Nick Campbell, CAO. In significant part, that's due to the agreements assume unpaid holidays within various departments, but it is a citywide balancing act and funding. That funding has not been transferred. These savings are the projected savings. So there are departments where they have excessive costs to obey layoffs versus this unpaid holiday savings within their departments, versus other departments would have the vice versa. As well, unbudgeted salary payouts are not, specifically the sick time payout increases are not budgeted within departments' budgets. We do have money set aside in the unappropriated balance for that, which would also be something we would address at a similar time. So there's multiple variables affecting some of those salary projections, the unbudgeted salary payouts, as well as these deals which we're projecting the savings within these departments, but we haven't actually made the transfers to where their final landing spot in terms of where those costs to obey layoffs are actually being borne. So that's
Great.
where that's coming from.
Great, so could we say that in this second FSR, that would be much more clear, the transfers would have been made, or when is the plan to have that clarity on the numbers, the transfers?
The agreements, so first of all, there is steady progress on the number of employees that are subject to layoff. As a reminder, we started the year with 614, and our office has been reporting regularly as employees have been transferring to other funded positions, thus eliminating the position without a layoff. We're down to now 275. At the end of this calendar year, our office will calculate the savings that would be required to keep however many employees. If that number is 250, let's say, we would calculate that number, and the civilian employees that have the agreements, that have made the agreements, would take the number of unpaid holidays, also known as furloughs, to cover the cost of those employees. At that time, as we said in the report, the savings that are generated by the departments due to those unpaid holidays, those savings, and this is why we have it as a recommendation, those cannot be spent for other things or for new things, for other activities. Those savings need to be held because those savings would need to be potentially transferred to other departments, because the unpaid holidays is a citywide effort, and we will need in the mid-year FSR, for example, and that's when we would see it. We would make the calculation, we would start the unpaid holidays, and then we would look to start making those transfers in the mid-year FSR to departments that are running deficits in their salary account.
Great, thank you. And are we talking about all city departments or just civilian departments?
It's civilians there were agreements that were made for among employees, civilian employees, and then there were a separate agreement that was made with the Police Protective League for sworn police. So it will affect all departments in one way or the other.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Councilmember McCosker.
Thank you very much. I want to follow up on that line of questioning. So just to be super clear, we started the year with 614 folks who were in essentially substitute authorities. And we had about, was it 3 months or 4 months? 3 months of funding for those folks anticipated in the budget?
We included 4 months of funding.
4 months of funding, so we're in that fourth month. We're down to 275, and so we have, funding for that, but we're down to on the transfer portal, we're down to the toughest part of it. What I'm concerned about is that of the 275, 205 of them are in the police department. Those are civilians in the police department. And as you know, every week we're doing this in the Personnel Committee and we're going over these issues, but it seems like this is going to be the hardest one to be able to come up with options for civilians in the police department to transfer to other departments. It's also going to be very impactful on police services, frankly. And so I just want to know, as we track this, when will we have a sense of whether we're down to just 205 and maybe we have solutions for 75 others in various departments? And is that the number that we will be comparing to? Is that the number we're going to be mathing to figure out how many furloughs folks will be taking?
Well, we'll map the number, however many employees we have in substitute authorities, in eliminated positions by the end of December. That will determine how many furloughs will need to be taken by the civilian employees that have made the agreements. The civilians within the police department, the goal is that savings related to the sworn overtime due to the volunteer overtime bank would cover the cost of the civilian employees in the Los Angeles Police Department. It remains to be seen how much savings will actually be generated, but given the delay in implementation of that program, it is unlikely that it will not achieve the savings required. Now, I will say the agreement does include a provision that if target savings aren't achieved, that we would come back to the table to discuss alternatives. Ideally, we can get over the workday hurdles and implement the program and start generating the savings as soon as possible.
So we're tracking all of the workday issues weekly too in personnel, and I'm aware of the delays in understandable delays in being able to implement the voluntary bank. Should it become apparent that the voluntary bank is going to be delayed to a point in time where that 205 can't be covered, are we back into labor negotiation?
We would. There's a provision in the letter of agreement that where the league has agreed to discuss alternatives if the savings have not been achieved, but we would need to take that up at EERC.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Any more questions?
I have other subjects for the CIO, if that's all right.
Sure.
On departmental receipts, what actions are we taking to track the departmental receipts and make sure that we, stay on track? This is an important area for recovery, and what can we expect to see in the coming weeks or maybe the next FSR?
This is Melissa Krantz of the Office of the CAO. So those revenue estimates were devised last year in April, and there were assumptions about the vacancies and all of that. So on one hand, we would expect higher receipts that would be revised with the coming budget process to look at whether we could expect more receipts for positions that are in, for employees that are in special fund positions. However, conversely, we also have special fund balances that need to be addressed. And if those are short, and that has contributed to the shortfall that we had last year, that would also constrain it. So we do this revision, it would come forward with the revised budget. And most of our receipts are related costs.
And this is intimately related to the last line of questioning, because we're moving folks into specially funded positions, and if we're not collecting on the receipts for specially funded positions, we just made a move for no reason.
Well, so the special fund related cost reimbursements does have a process. The bulk of it comes in the latter half of the year. So there's two ways that it can be done. It can be done through funding a position directly in the budget, and then there might be quarterly transfers of those receipts. But the other way it is also handled is, like through a billing kind of process too. So in that case, especially with those receipts, it does have an administrative component that has not necessarily resulted in receipts not being realized, but more in delayed receipts. And so we are going to obviously try to press upon departments to make sure that they complete their billing administrative processes on time.
It's a short-term issue, but we typically do well at the beginning of the year because we're collecting receipts from last year.
Correct.
And this is probably a year where we don't want to make, we would want to help next year. Be better to collect all of our receipts in this year. And as Mr. Blumenfeld said, take that trick away for next year.
And I'm going to put forward the complaint that we often hear from departments is that because of vacancies, they often don't have the administrative positions to do the billing.
Right. Thank you.
I have a couple of FEMA-related questions. Can you please provide an update on FEMA reimbursements, including reimbursements related to the January windstorm and fire events? And specifically, what's the amount of funding that has been received so far, and what can be expected in the future?
On FEMA reimbursements for the fire, we have nothing yet, and we likely won't get anything this fiscal year. Related to that, however, earlier this year, the state did enact AB 100, which was a vehicle to help jurisdictions cash flow those FEMA reimbursements. After going back and forth with the state on what that process would look like, we did submit a couple of requests that we did receive $15 million in funding. Please note what this means is that when we're actually able to go to FEMA and request the full reimbursement, the state's going to repay themselves because they've fronted that FEMA cash flow. We are going to be doing, now that we've come up to an agreement on what this process will look like, with what the forms look like and all of that, because it's something new for the state as well. So we've been cooperating with them and collaborating on what this process would look like. We will continue to submit our additional requests. But FEMA takes a long time. And the FEMA process, we don't know the impact of a new requirement this year, which is that the DHS secretary has to sign off on any grant award over $100,000. That is essentially all of our FEMA work for the fire, because they're all large projects over $1 million. And that's how FEMA defines a large project, $1 million or more.
Has FEMA been paying out to other cities or other regions? Is money flowing out of FEMA?
At this time, no, because
For anything?
my understanding is that they have reached the capacity of their disaster fund from which they pay. And given the lack of a budget, they don't have funds for anything except the most urgent necessity.
But before the shutdown, was the spigot on? It just wasn't coming to us yet?
Because we're not at a point in the FEMA process that we can request to draw down the funds. We're just
Understood.
not, there's a number of steps in the process and we're just not there yet.
How far away do you think we are before we can start drawing down funds?
We would expect that we can start drawing down funds for emergency protective measures and debris removal maybe towards the end of the fiscal year. And please remember, once FEMA says okay and authorizes payment, we then have to go through Cal OES's review process. It's called Verify As You Go. and they review everything again, and they are ultimately the one who cuts a check to us. So it is a lengthy process at the front end and at the back end when we can ask for payment.
Okay. I have a couple infrastructure questions. Does anyone else have FEMA questions? Yep, go ahead.
Well, it's Firestorm.
Sure.
Firestorm related, just one of the issues that we've been discussing in committee, and we have the city attorney coming back with the ordinance to waive permit fees for the fire ravaged area. I don't see that those waiver of fees are reflected in this FSR. Is that true? Have we accounted for the potential of that?
We do not have those in this FSR. Those are not assumed. At most, we do mention those in relation to some revenue projections and some of the smaller issues of concern within departments, but they're not baked into our figures.
Okay, so we would, to bake them in, you wait until things are real and done before you bake them in, they'll be in the next FSR should it happen?
Yes, assuming we would generally wait on things like that, especially with this been a moving target in terms of what those numbers are, to when it's more near final. So I would note that just any impacts that would have to the general fund would just add on to our $80 million unsolved figure.
Okay. Well, there's also the CIO's transmitted a council file requesting $8 million from the UB for yet another BOE contract, but I don't want to diminish it. It's for AECOM for work, including the restoration plan. Where is that in the FSR? Or how are we going to account for that $8 million?
That $8 million is in a separate report that is pending before the ad hoc recovery committee and then would come forward to council, so it is not within the FSR.
Okay, thank you. I think it's just important for us to note these things.
Tangentially related, we noticed that around 17 million in CTIP has been identified to front fund some of the repairs needed for the city-owned facilities in the that were destroyed during the Palisades fire. What projects, if any, will be delayed from the CTIP list? Anything in the pipeline that's going to get pushed back?
Well, those funds were budgeted specifically to help address with both the slope stabilization and debris removal, as well as a separate line item for DOT related, like traffic signals and signs, to repair and restore. That is essentially front funding and cash flowing the FEMA projects that
But was that something that we budgeted in the?
Yes.
This isn't a new line item in CTIP?
No,
This is something that we already?
it was something that was in the budget that you adopted.
Okay, thank you. That was unclear in the FSR. Where are we anticipating front funding the $70 million for rebuilding? Where is that going to come from?
We are going to have to look at what eligible funding sources there are once we have a good sense of the timing of what's needed this year, say for the design of like a library or something like that, and then when would the construction funds be needed, and we would just have to identify it. Most likely that will be generally the general fund. But where eligible special funds can be identified, we will I try to work on that.
Or maybe state funding?
If you're talking about the AB 100, they will not front fund the permanent works until we have incurred expenditures. They've been clear on that. Other state funding I couldn't speak to. I don't think it exists yet.
Okay, I believe the FSR listed that as a possibility. Okay, I have no more questions for the CAO. Colleagues, any more questions? Yes, Councilwoman Hutt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the first FSR. I have a question about the dockless scooter program. We're trying to get to full cost recovery as quickly as possible, and so we can't schedule the items until the CAO's office completes the fee review report. So what's the status of the fee review report for the dockless scooters?
I'm sorry, the status of which, I couldn't hear which report or which issue?
The dockless scooter program?
Yeah. I'll need, okay, great.
Hi, Allison Wilhite with the CAO. We've been meeting with LEDOT and we've received their data. We're just working on our analysis of it, but our goal is to have that report as soon as possible.
So is that like in a month, 3 weeks? What is that?
We do want to make sure that it can be heard before council goes on recess. Our goal is as soon as possible.
Before recess. Okay, thank you. I have a couple other questions. This is about cannabis. What's the current status of the negotiation with the state with regard to the potential liability to the Cannabis Regulation Trust Fund?
We have representatives from Cannabis here for more specific details, but there has been progress in terms of lowering that amount that need to be repaid due to those ineligible funds. It's just a question of what that lowering would look like at this point. But if you'd want more details,
You mean what percentages you're considering in lowering? Is that what you're saying?
the conversations are about how much may need to be repaid back to the state. At
Yeah.
this point, the $10 million in the first FSR is what we would consider an upper bound or the high end of that amount, based on conversations that DCR is in with the state. There's been progress there, and their anticipation is that that amount will come down. The question is how much. We don't have an amount to say that it will come down at that point, so we are tracking the $10 million upper bound at this point.
Understood. I have another question. It's on sanitation. Will the Bureau of Sanitation's rate issues be right-sized by next fiscal year when the new fees are fully implemented?
Regarding the solid waste fee,
Yeah.
By next fiscal year, we would project being at full cost recovery.
We're projecting full cost recovery?
Correct.
Thank
The new rate will be implemented now. There's a delay, and that is affecting our expenditure, our overspending. But we'll have by next fiscal year, the new rates will realize a full year of the new rates, so it'll be at full cost recovery next year.
Thank you. That's all, Madam Chair.
All right, colleagues, any other questions for Mr. Szabo before we move? First, we'll start with the City Attorney's Office. No? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Szabo and team. Yeah, don't leave, please. Would the City Attorney's Office please join us? I believe we have Ann Haley and Christina Gerber coming to the table. Welcome to the party. So colleagues, the City Attorney's Office is projected to spend $34.17 million more than its approved budget for this fiscal year, half of which is due to expenditures on outside counsel, which has soared to a projected $23.52 million. The entire budget for outside counsel that we approved in June for the year was $5.62 million. Given that overspending, it's notable that the FSR also details a $15.08 million surplus sitting in the liability claims account as of August 31st, 2025. So just a few questions for me, and I'll turn it over to colleagues. What's the current balance of the liability claims account? Has this amount changed?
Hello, Ann Haley, outside counsel manager. I do not have the answer to that question, liability claims. I don't know, we'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay, maybe someone else can come while we ask the other questions. What's the current balance of the UB outside counsel, including workers' compensation account?
Now that I do know, Councilwoman, that balance is $1,358,000 left of the outside
Okay.
counsel set aside.
Is the $1.36 million to be transferred in this FSR sufficient for outside counsel costs through December of 2025?
No, it is not.
Has the city attorney identified any savings from existing outside counsel contracts?
Not currently, and to assure you, we do look at those consistently, and if a contract is no longer needed, we identify that and revert those funds for other purposes, but currently we do not have any such contracts.
Okay, colleagues, any questions for the city attorney's office? Yes, Councilwoman Hernandez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I have a handful of questions, but just real quick, my first one is, so you said that this is not enough? Does that mean that you do know the total amount and it's just being presented in piecemeal?
Yes, so we actually have on file now, Councilwoman, our outside counsel funding request that hopefully will be before you next week now. And the need through December and is actually $11 million. And again, just to say, these numbers are not just coming out of thin air. We have budgets from all of our current law firms that we request sporadically. And those numbers change as the litigation may change. So these are numbers based on specific detailed budgets from the law firm. So that number through December is closer to $11 million.
Wonderful, thank you. My next question is that the FSR attributes roughly $34 million in overspending to litigation and outside counsel costs. What specific cost containment or case management strategies are being implemented to prevent these expenses from reoccurring at the same scale next fiscal year? Do you have anybody on your team who's leading this effort?
It's a team effort, actually. And I will tell you, too, that we certainly vet every need for outside counsel. So in an attempt to answer your question, before we send a matter out to outside counsel, it only goes out if we cannot handle the matter in-house, either because we don't have that particular expertise in-house, which is not as often as the fact that we just don't have sufficient internal resources to handle the matter. That hopefully is being ameliorated because we do have some additional positions that have been filled. I understand just today in the civil liability division, we had new attorneys begin just today. So, you know, and this is also being generated by the lawsuits that are being filed. We've seen an unprecedented number of lawsuits being filed. And of course, that's a risk management, a whole another thing. But hopefully, in terms of next year, both the additional positions that we have been able to fill and just hopefully fewer lawsuits will be filed. But in terms of kind of maintaining the costs, we review invoices in great detail and make adjustments where we can, and just manage the litigation as best we can, along with outside counsel.
So, Councilwoman, am I on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Speak
I'm
closer to
Kate-
the mic, though, please.
Can you bring it closer?
Yeah.
please?
Kate
Thank you.
Keneally, I'm the chief of the civil litigation branch. So we do the defensive, we don't have all the outside counsel contracts. We have many of them because we do the defensive litigation for the city. You know, I think Ann Haley's correct. The first way to reduce outside counsel costs is for us to staff up so we can have enough attorneys to handle the caseloads that we have. Our caseloads, as you've heard before, are pretty high. But in terms of contract by contract management, each of our contracts, our outside counsel are working with our deputies. So if we have, sometimes we have deputies working actively on the case, depending on who we have available to help. We supervise them. They get permission from us to file things. We review every single bill. I work very closely with Ann's team, who go through each invoice that we get with a fine-tooth comb. We read every word. We keep our outside counsel bills very tight. If you talk to our outside counsel, they'll probably tell you that we cut things where we feel like they've overbilled. I will tell you that our experience is typically that we don't find that, but we look very closely. So we are working with them, we are strategizing with them, we are supervising the litigation. So that is, you know, how we've managed contracts like this in that manner for quite a while.
Great, thank you. And do you think that that is the best model with what you have, or that's just the best model in general?
I think we have an effective model. I mean, I think the issue really is the staffing issue, right? We hire outside counsel when we're understaffed for matters we could handle in-house. In those cases, that's going to cost the city a little bit more than us doing it. The other matters in which we hire outside counsel are matters where we can't do them. We don't have the expertise. The sexual abuse cases are one example of a kind of a tranche of matters that we hired outside counsel for, where we really didn't have experience in that kind of work. the load of the work that came in was very high. And so we had to spend money to hire outside counsel there. But I don't think that we're unlike any other government law entity in terms of managing these kinds of contracts.
Great, thank you. I have a few more questions, Chairwoman, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Great. And I hear you, and at some point, I would love an analysis of what those different buckets are, because some city attorney offices actually don't handle, like, the criminal justice cases. They only handle civil and other policies or other cases related to outside things. So I think that is something that we need to talk about, is if the city attorney doesn't have these expertise and we need to keep hiring out, is this something that as a city attorney's office we should still be taking on in the future? If we don't have enough staff, if litigation costs keep going up, and if we don't
Right,
have the
and
money.
yeah, absolutely. That's something that we look at and we think about, right? Because if there's an area in which we see repeated need for outside counsel, you know, that's my job, to look at that and see if we have an area where we need to staff up in a particular expertise area. If it's a transient need, for example, I hope these sexual abuse cases that we're seeing, you know, we're seeing a bubble, right? Does it make sense for us to hire 10 lawyers to do that? Probably not, because they'll be tenured employees after the cases go away. We really benefit from generalists in civil litigation, and then also we have our niche, right, the police area, the trip and falls, and those types of folks.
Great, thank you. How is the city attorney's office working with departments proactively to reduce future legal exposure, for example, through early intervention, training, or policy review, so that we're not continually budgeting for reactive litigation spending?
We do work closely with our client departments and with our municipal attorneys. So in our municipal branch of the office, those are kind of, they're more like in-house counsel for the different departments in the city. We work with them. We talk to and provide each city department with, I think, monthly reports on litigation. We talk to them about how to do corrective action. We have a history of providing trainings. We haven't done that as much recently because staffing hasn't been where we would like it to be. But for example, in the past, we had a program of providing employment training to LAPD and other departments where we'd have a lawyer go over there periodically and, you know, brief people, give their management legal updates on those areas. So we have an ongoing dialogue with them, and we try to work very closely. You may know in the claims board process, we have corrective action reports that we fill out with the clients that talk about the reason for the litigation, the correction that we think is needed. We don't have control, we can't direct the departments, but I think that we provide them with quite a bit of information about where the legal liabilities are and what we think in terms of legal advice they could do to address them.
Thank you. And I would love for my team to be able to follow up with you with that, because I've been looking for filled out corrective action reports for a long time, since the moment I got into this committee, because I see when they come in, either they're not attached to the files or the corrective action report is not filled at all. And I keep asking questions about them because the process that you just described would definitely help us prevent future litigation if it was actually a tool that was being used so that we could learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
But empty corrective action reports that we constantly get or missing ones, that means that for each of those cases, we don't know if corrective action was taken that would be impactful to prevent future litigation. So if you have examples of what you've described, I would love to connect on that because I have not seen that in happen in real life.
Yeah, we're happy to follow up and talk more about that. And of course, you know, the next step then is the operational follow-up. So we're absolutely ready to support those efforts and give you more information.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. It's my understanding that we authorized more than 100 additional positions in this year's budget for the department, and that there's a vacancy rate in the city attorney's office as of August of 14%, and that there were only 8 planned new hires this fiscal year so far. So I'm wondering what the plan is to bring that vacancy rate down so that, as you noted, we can have city attorneys working on work that's traditionally city attorney work rather than outsourcing work that costs us much more to outside counsel. So is there a hiring plan and strategies and goals for filling all those vacancies, and what's the timeline on that?
We're actively hiring. I don't know what's behind the 14% vacancy rate you're talking about, if that's city attorney office wide or.
City attorney office wide.
Okay, so, attorneys, paralegals, legal secretaries, all of those people are really important for us to be able to staff up cases and to handle them in a cost-effective manner. We are doing a lot of hiring now. I don't know what the numbers are, but for example, today, 3 new attorneys in our general litigation section started. I met them this morning. We're working very hard to bring folks in. I will tell you that the legal market is sometimes, we may have a lot of advertisements out, but it takes a while to get hires in. But we're working really aggressively on that. I don't know, Brock may have a more well-rounded office-wide view of those numbers.
Hi, Barack
Yeah.
Vaughn. Oh, let me say thank you. Hi, Barack Vaughn, Managing Director of the Business, Finance, and Operations for the office. We currently do have a hiring plan. We actually have hired since July 32 lawyers, 42 total staff. We currently have 50 open recruitments. So we are trying to staff up as rapidly as possible in a challenging market, but we are doing our best and moving forward. I'm trying to think what else your question was, but that's really where we are. But however, I say that, we have lost about 19 lawyers in that time too, so there is that attrition rate. So we're trying to fill as quickly as possible while sometimes losing attorneys as well.
Councilmember McCosker.
Thank you very much for that. Just out of curiosity, what's the challenging market for hiring lawyers?
In some instances, there are competitive departments or competitive practice fields. I would say we found employment in litigation. There is a competition in the city for talent. And while we are, as Kate has said, we are staffing up as quickly as possible. Sometimes we see within the HR context attorneys wanting a certain amount of money because other firms outside in the city can pay them more.
So hiring in for particular specialties rather than hiring in, DCA, 1s or 2s and putting them into criminal.
We're hiring as for
those
open
would be
prosecution.
easy to hire, I
Right.
think.
For open
Because
prosecution
There's a lot
positions.
of kids going through law school and looking for jobs. I hear from them every week. But when you have a specialty, you're trying to fill a specialty, that's hard to do. I get that. You're
Right.
competing with boutique firms.
Right, and then for our criminal positions, we are advertising those as well and bringing in, I think, in this the last couple weeks, we had at least 6 DCA 1s and 2s come in our criminal division as well.
That's great for the building for the future. The question I had, though, thank you for that, was more to do with litigation. I'm really acutely aware of the fact that not all litigation is created equal. There are cases that are have a specialty and they have a pace that is a normal pace that we're used to. Cases take a few years. You can ramp up for that with outside counsel. Then every once in a while we have the bet the farm litigation that comes in hard and fast, and we had that recently.
Yep.
And we had the circumstance where we had 40 billers in one billing cycle. And so the lesson learned from that, painful lesson learned from that, I hope, is that we, on the front end, we have really careful instructions for outside counsel and what's going to be acceptable and what's not going to be acceptable. We need to be in a position to be able to say, look at page 4 of your agreement, we're not buying everybody 40 lawyers' lunches, or we're not, paying for the air conditioning. So do we have all that stuff in place?
Yes.
Actually, we do. We have a boilerplate contract that does have stringent billing guidelines, and it's just a matter of enforcing them for sure. Yeah.
So maybe it's unfair to relive this, but there will be other opportunities to relive it. What happened? How did we have 40 billers on that case if we have stringent guidelines?
Well, we have, one of the realities we're seeing is the cases, jury verdicts in general are escalating, right? And so we will see cases like that maybe 10 years ago were $1 million cases. They're not that anymore for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, each of our cases, we certainly supervise them and do our best to try to bring the best deal we can get, to you all. But it's the reality that we are living in right now.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and that's the bet the farm part where we are really, really, act quickly and are really careful to make sure that we get, in some cases, get
Right.
the best possible resources. But even in those cases, I think we have to make sure that we're not writing a blank check.
Yeah, and Councilman, also in that case, of course, we don't get the invoice until that work had already been done.
Which is what the agreement's for. So be able to say, we ain't paying it.
Because we're not billed, we're billed, at the end of the month.
Yeah.
For what came before, but yeah.
Okay,
Or
well-
the next month, yeah,
I mean, I think it's something we just have to stay on.
for sure.
I was, in hearing you, I think it's really understanding with some of those firms to see what their run rate is and making sure we're on top of that to ask if we're seeing that, if they're going to exceed the amounts.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I have.
Colleagues, any additional questions? Councilmember Blumenfield.
I guess I won't belabor it. My colleagues have all asked the main questions. I guess just to underscore the concern, an 18% overspend is a lot by any measure, and I understand some of the reasons, but I also, we need to have the predictability of less of an overspend and a better sense of, our new reality is what it is, and just we need to accept what our reality is if that's the increasing cost of litigation. We just want to have our eyes wide open, and so I'll just underscore that point because we can't sustain having those high percentages of overspends for any department over any period of time. It just makes budgeting really impossible or very difficult. So, but it's been covered, said, and stated already by my colleagues, so I will stop there. Thank you.
Any additional questions for the City Attorney's Office? Okay, thank you so much. Next, we're going to move to the Office of Finance. The Office of Finance, please come to the table. And then next we'll go to LAPD.
Afternoon.
Thanks very much. I think I had asked for this. I have two areas. One's TOT and the other's investment policy. Remember how excited I was about questions on the investment policy?
Yes.
First, the simpler one, TOT is still lagging, and that's because we're not being nice to Canada and people don't want to travel internationally to come here. Do you anticipate, and is there any way to anticipate trends and see what's going to happen with the world events, with the happy world events, the World Cup and other big events in LA leading up to the Olympics? Is it possible to project a trend on TOT?
We've, as we've been working on our projections overall, one of the things we've looked at with TOT is LAWA's projections on visitor numbers that have seemed to match relatively well, kind of discounting for the unanticipated major events, which obviously none of us can project. But absent large negative events, I think that's proven to be a relatively good measure of looking forward through the next 6 to 12 months. Still kind of playing with that to try and see exactly how accurate we can get it. But it's something we've been working on. Certainly with the large events, we will see bumps from those large events. I would hazard a guess that those bumps will be slightly smaller because of the kind of prevailing travel issues. But yes, it's extremely hard to really project out TOT more than 6 months or so. People just don't make plans that far in advance.
Okay. And then on the investment reports, I know that we had a lot of analysis and discussion of the investment portfolio and whether there are creative ways to help us, meet our financial goals, whether that is, reducing the amount that is in the investment funds or using them to lend it back to ourselves so that we're not paying a financial house. Are there any developments or thoughts in the coming years where we could use our investment funds to help us close these gaps?
We have, as requested, we've been putting together a report, kind of pulling a bunch of data and exploring some of those ideas. My understanding is that report's expected to come out within the next week or so.
Yeah. Will that include using investment funds to front fund projects and basically, take loans out of the funds?
I don't know. I can't speak to that at this time.
Okay. Someone else is writing that.
Yes.
Is it in-house or is someone doing it out of house?
That's in-house.
Great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Colleagues, any questions for finance? Councilman, oh, no? Okay, thank you very much. We're going to turn next to LAPD. Folks could come up. I have just a couple of questions.
Can I just say, while finance is walking out, can I just say to finance that your recommendation last year from your boss and your department to add resources to help us with tax collection was effective, and I just want to say thank you.
I second that.
Let's go.
So just a couple of questions. Welcome. You want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Trina Unzicker. I work with Fiscal Group at LAPD.
Mara Legaspi, Fiscal Group at LAPD.
Welcome. So the report details overspending of $3.56 million resulting from projected sworn hiring above the levels assumed in the 25-26 budget. How many additional recruits does that $3.56 million account for, or is it really just a question of hiring sooner than expected?
The 3.56 deficit assumes hiring up to 410 recruits. So that's 170 above the 240 that's budgeted.
170 of the 240?
The budget assumed hiring 240. The hiring plan assumes we would hire 410 through the end of the year.
But that's not what was approved in the budget.
That's correct. The budget assumed hiring 240.
So we know, because we adopted it, and it was voted on by the council and signed by the mayor, that the 25-26 adopted budget authorized 240 police officers with the potential of hiring up to 480 officers contingent upon available funding. I'm wondering what funding sources have been identified to support hiring the additional officers. And maybe, Matt, this is something that you want to join us up here for, because I understand that we're waiting for a report back on that. This feels like a game of chicken. What's up?
Any additional hiring above plan, well, I'll say it this way, any police hiring is a general fund obligation. So as it relates to identifying sources of funds for additional hiring, that would be a general fund obligation. I would point out the 3.5 plus million would be this current year impact. There would be a significantly higher impact in our projections per your question previously about our outlook. There would be a significantly higher impact in fiscal 27 if the hiring proceeds to 410.
Does LAPD anticipate it will meet their plan to hire 432 new officers? And at what point do we say that this is not what we budgeted for and we can't afford it? I mean, we're waiting for a financial report on how where this new money is going to come from. And in the meantime, the department is hiring as if they're going to hire to 432 with the potential of hiring up to 480. I'm confused.
The FSR that's before you identifies,
Yeah, I want to ask Mr. McCosker to jump in here for a sec.
Yeah, so just looking at the contemporaneous document from the time that we adopted a budget, a press release went out, Mayor Bass signs budget, and announces, Mayor Karen Bass yesterday signed a balanced budget and announced that she has secured an agreement with City Council leadership to restore LAPD hiring levels. Council leadership will identify funds for an additional 240 recruits within 90 days. Those 90 days have come and gone. The money will be used after LAPD fulfills hiring 240 officers. And I think the simple question is, what money is it? And if it hasn't been identified, who are we firing that is currently on payroll to cover this?
And at what point are we going to be real about what is happening? And at what point does the chair of personnel tell the director of the personnel department to stop hiring new officers?
Or start firing other people?
So my office has not identified additional funds for that purpose as of today, as of the report. The report in front of you, of course, projects significant overspending, and still, with our identified solutions, a gap of $80 million. If instructed, we would need to identify the funds, not just for this year, but ongoing for next fiscal year, which were not assumed in the adopted budget.
Or in the four-year outlook?
Correct. Correct.
We have to be grown-ups here.
Yeah.
Every dollar only has 100 pennies. And the document, the budget has to mean something. I mean, everyone's worst fear about a department running rogue, and I think if you listed the departments that are most likely to run rogue, we're looking at them right here. I'm a huge, gigantic supporter of hiring LAPD officers, but it has to be in the budget. It has to be in the budget.
And
what the hell happened?
And if there's a proposal to find the money so that we can hire the additional officers, I would welcome that report so that we can budget it. But we haven't seen that proposal, right? Where's the new money going to come from? And so this first FSR is concerning to me because it seems like what Councilmember McCosker just described is happening. And at some point, it's got to stop. And that press release that went out, that didn't go through budget. There was no conversation with budget about that. And I would love to find the money. Let's figure out how to generate that new $80 million for next year, but we don't have it yet, do we?
We have not identified it yet. That is correct.
So at some point, we're going to have to stop the hiring. That's all I'm going to say. If we can't find the money, we have to stop the hiring once we hit the 240 that's budgeted for in this year's budget. Correct?
We would either have to stop the hiring, or we would continue to run over expenditures that would need to be closed through other means.
So fire current city employees next year when we go through this process all over again. I mean, it's a zero-sum game at some point. Unless we're bringing in new money, which I would love to do, welcome the opportunity to find new ways to bring in money, but that hasn't been identified for this purpose.
Right. So does every department get to do this? What would we do if Rec and Parks went over their hiring budget? What would we do if personnel did? What would we do? I mean, does every department get this option? Just keep hiring and then ask the CIO to find the money?
The manner in which we hire sworn personnel is different. Typically, you would have positions in a budget. We use Rec and Parks for as an example, and we'll talk about full-time positions. You would authorize the number of positions, and you would budget for all of those positions, which is why every year in the budget process we say all of the positions that are allocated to a department All of the position authorities need to be fully funded because we assume that the department is going to hire up to its full authority. If the LAPD, we fund a hiring plan. So technically, the department has well over 10,000 authorities for sworn personnel, but was only funded for the 80. I don't remember exactly the number, but it was around the 85 or 8,600. Yes, 8646 was the, well, that's the current deployment. So that's the challenge, is that other departments would not be able to exceed their authority in the budget because they would only have a certain number of positions and a certain number of funded positions. That's not the case with LAPD.
It's not the case because we structure it differently, but we have this extra legal agreement with council leadership that said in 90 days we're going to identify funds, which we haven't done, and that if we identified the funds, which we haven't, the money would be used to go beyond the 240. So I'm wondering, even though we do it differently in LAPD, we still have a city council and a budget, right?
Certainly, Councilman. And if this committee were to instruct me to identify funds for additional hiring, we would present options in order to fully fund the additional hiring at this committee's request.
But we didn't. If we did, you would, but we didn't, and it still came out this way. Thank you. That's really not a question.
So, bottom line, LAPD is on track to hit 240 hires in January, which is before we hear a mid-year FSR. I think we need to know where the money is coming from to maintain this pace. Otherwise, LAPDs can't be authorized to continue to hire above 240. There's just no money for it. And it's not what the adopted budget of the city of Los Angeles calls for. I would love for it to be double that. I know others disagree, but it's not. So either we find the money, new money for the additional hires, or we need to have a serious conversation about following the budget. Otherwise, why are we here? Anything to add, council member?
No, I agree with what you're saying. I think we should find the money. I'm glad that we're finally filling our academies, but I understand the structural issues that we're dealing with, and we need to get to that next step where we figure out. We need to set priorities as a city. I mean, I do think it's important to hire, but we need to do it in a budget context. So I hope we can find the money.
Yeah, I hope we can find the money too. Councilwoman Hernandez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. No, I agree. I think the reason we spend literally the entire month of May discussing and going back and forth on the budget, making decisions, doing the calculations with everybody. So I think following the budget it's key and it's important to the structure of the city. But also, if we're gonna find new money, it cannot be on the backs of civilian workers. Can the LAPD look internally within their department? They spend over $6 million on uniforms alone in 1 year. Are there no other line items that they can look at internally? Like, if y'all want to hire, look internally. We have no other money anywhere else. And I will not stand to fire people in this process. So I just want to uplift that they should look in their coffers.
Colleagues, any more questions?
I have a lot for LAPD.
Okay, go ahead. It's all you.
Thank you. Given ongoing civilian vacancies and high sworn overtime, how is the department reassessing which roles truly require sworn staff, and where could civilian positions or technology relieve cost pressure without reducing public safety coverage?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
Given ongoing civilian vacancies and high sworn overtime, how is the department reassessing which roles truly require sworn staff, and where could civilian positions or technology relieve cost pressure without reducing public safety coverage?
Good afternoon, Councilmember. I'm Deputy Chief John Pinter from Human Resources Bureau. Thank you for the question. So just in the last couple of months, our Chief McDonald, had asked our entire department to look at which civilian positions that we have now, what are critical positions, and same thing with our sworn positions. So kind of a twofold ask for our entire department. The first one was to look at all of our civilian vacancies, which we have. The second part was to look at our sworn positions that we currently have, that some of those positions may be eliminated or moved into operational assignments. And I think that's one way where we're trying not to impact the civilians that we have. As you're well aware, we are concerned with the 205 civilian positions that we may be losing shortly. So I think from top to bottom, ma'am, we are looking at ways to address those positions specifically so we don't lose any further civilian positions.
Great, and does that mean moving more sworn back into the field and putting more civilians back in civilian roles?
Yes, that's one of the primary goals of this exercise that the chief has asked the entire department to look at.
Great, thank you. The FSR notes that the voluntary overtime bank has not yet been implemented. What barriers are delaying it, and what is the timeline for activating this tool so the city can begin realizing savings this fiscal year?
So the VOB is actually a two-part exercise. There's the implementation of the VOB within Workday, and then there's also ensuring that Workday is accurately retaining the overtime banks as well, because those two rules need to talk to each other. So right now, we are working with the HRP team, so that includes ITA and the controller, as well as Workday. We are having daily meetings to ensure that we're doing everything we can to make certain that that testing is working as it should. We will continue to meet until we're able to figure out what the solution is to ensure that we can implement the VOB accurately and timely.
Thank you. What's the estimated time for implementation, rollout?
We don't have a timeline yet. We will know more by the time we get to the end of this week, because this week will end the testing. It'll mark the end of our testing. And at that point, we would be able to provide an update.
Great, thank you. I look forward to that. With federal reimbursements delayed due to the shutdown, what proportion of the department's reimbursable overtime and program costs are currently underfunded? And how is LAPD managing cash flow to avoid further reserve fund strain?
The reimbursable overtime is front-funded in our budget. The reimbursements from the reimbursable overtime comes in as general fund revenue later on. So to your question as to how we're cash flowing it, the appropriation for the reimbursable overtime is already in our account.
Great, and this is for the federal reimbursements for everything?
Yes, our reimbursable overtime includes different reimbursables, so not just federal, state, other city entities, they're all covered under that.
Great, thank you. Last two questions. This is around around LAPD overtime and the UB for interim housing. In regards to the transfer from the UB into interim housing homelessness services for LAPD overtime, how is this being allocated across the districts?
Hello, Committee Chair, committee members, and members of the public. I am Commander Gisela Espinoza, and I oversee homelessness for the department. Thank you for the question, ma'am. We have a system where it's going to divisions, each division. And as you know, since the budget was cut by 50% from 8.3 million to 4.3 million, we are dividing it by 21 divisions, and I can give you the breakdown of how that's being done. It's going to turn out to be 1,983 hours per division, and as you know, the council districts are overlapped within one division, so you know, there's a lot of moving parts to it, but that's basically what it's going to come out to, 1,983 hours. So the way that it's broken down, the allocation overview is $4.378 million, forecasted at an overtime rate of $105.08. That equals 41,000 hours, 41,663 that is. Those 41,663 are divided by the 21 areas for a base allotment of 1,983 hours with 20 hours remaining. As you have seen in the past, and if we reference Council File 25-0600, there are multiple reports in there that we have provided in the past. The format in which we capture our productivity, our expenses, and the number of personnel assigned to all of those activities has been approved by council, I believe, in fiscal year 23-24. In fiscal year 23-24, just to kind of give a background, we were mandated to report quarterly to council on how we spent the money and what the results were. So in fiscal year 24-25, the council went ahead and voted to make the $8.3 million as part of our regular overtime budget, and it was earmarked by our department for the same use. At that time, there was not a requirement formally set by City Council for us to provide quarterly reporting. Therefore, no formal quarterly reporting was submitted to council in fiscal year 24-25. However, as a best practice, and because council had already approved our reporting format, I went ahead and kept that requirement, like I said, as a best practice, because we all loved it, and it actually gives us a perfect picture of where every dollar and every cent is going and what activities are happening with that funding. So those reports were maintained, and they were processed up the chain of command from my office to the chief of police, and that's where it ended, whereas before they would move on to city council. So I do have copies of all those reports that I provided to our government liaison, and he went ahead and communicated with, I think, CD4 to have those, when we went to Housing and Homelessness Committee, to have those reports uploaded to the council file. So that request was made. As of today, I try to confirm if those reports were actually updated to the council file, and the council office said they were going to get back to me. So I think we have a pretty robust system in place to capture not only where the money goes, how we disperse it, but also all the activities associated with that fund.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you for all your work in documenting that.
You're welcome, ma'am.
We can have those records. When is, and so you said that the accounting right now, or in the past, was sent up to the chief, but now out of Housing and Homelessness, it's going to be, after that conversation will be coming to council?
Well, the way that it was structured before is all the reports went to the city council through our chain of command, right? So in 24-25 fiscal year, there was no requirement for us to submit them, but I
Understood.
went ahead and continued to provide them. So
Yes.
now that the money is back in the UB as it was in 23-24, we are happy. We already submitted our proposal for how to invest the money and the criteria for which we can use it for. And we are happy to provide those quarterly reports once we obtain the funding and it's dispersed, and we start again with our vehicle dwelling operations at CareCare Plus on an overtime basis, because that's what we track. We don't track all the activities citywide, we only
Understood.
track what occurs with that fund.
Great, thank you. My last question is, when are we given notice when this money has been depleted?
By the end of the fiscal year, so we have an accounting mechanism that supports, and it's kind of like a fail-safe for what we get from our fiscal group. And we track the money as we go, and we produce a report every 2 weeks.
Okay.
So every 2 weeks, we know how much money is available. And by the end of the fiscal year, like for last fiscal year, for example, we were not any hours over or under, we were right at zero. So we have a pretty robust mechanism to track those hours, and we make notifications constant communication with all the bureaus and the people that are involved in using that fund to make sure that everybody's on track, to not overspend, and to go ahead and do right by the people's money and not spend it foolishly without justification.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
You're
Chairwoman.
welcome.
Colleagues, anyone else with questions for LAPD? Councilmember Kosker.
Well, I'll just make an observation. I don't know if it's for LAPD or for CIO, but if you go to page 71 of the report, we have 2 paragraphs after the table. And this is a pretty dire night and day picture here. The penultimate paragraph ends by saying, if we don't meet our projections, we recommend the department explore scaling back civilian hiring, cutting civilians. And then the following paragraph says, and by the way, we are moving forward with a hiring plan to get to 410 officers, which I totally support. But it could not be more clear here to make my point that we're talking about firing civilians to hire sworn officers. And this was the exact debate we had in the budget where we said we weren't going to fire whatever the number was. It was a gigantic number of civilians, basically gut the entire civilian operation so that we could hire officers. We made that choice in the budget, and Mayor signed the budget, and now we seem to be painted into a corner where we are effectuating the very same choice without any deliberative action by the City Council. Again, not a question. If I said any of that wrong, correct me. Tell me where I'm wrong. Page 71 seems to say, fire civilians so we can hire more officers. I'm for hiring officers, but at that cost?
Chairwoman?
Trying to figure out the best way to address that, Councilman. The department and moving forward with the hiring is because that was based on conversations with the mayor and the chief, and what came out, we were under the belief that we'd be able to continue to hire. And that's why we're proceeding in that direction in this report. It's not that we're trying to pull a fast one or do anything like that. It's that was our understanding. And with the VOB, there's an understanding that there's going to also be a cost savings that would allow us to maintain our civilian workforce. So we're moving forward based upon that understanding and that knowledge. We're not trying to play a shell game or do anything.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that you're responding to, I think, what is a need by many of the council members, if not all, and many of our constituents, if not all, to continue to build the sworn forces of the department. But the VOB is not a near reality, and we know that. And the formal actions of adopting the budget are a known quantity, and the public statement that we're going to identify funds and then keep hiring is also a known quantity. And so you, like me, are just one cog in this giant machine. And so thank you for responding, and you responded as best you can, but there are forces beyond us that seem to have put us here. Thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Hernandez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I would like to add an instruction, if possible. I would like to instruct the LAPD to report to the city administrative officer on identified savings or proposed restructuring, and direct the CAO to evaluate options to reallocate those savings towards deficits within the department.
Is there a second to this motion?
Can you read that one more time?
Instruct the LAPD to report back to the city attorney. Let me try again. Oh man. Instruct the LAPD to report to the city administrative officer on identified savings or proposed restructuring, and direct the CAO to evaluate options to reallocate those dollars towards deficits within the department. So have the department look internally in its coffers for money and move it into the deficits that it has, which is the lack of money for these hiring positions.
And you want to do that as a verbal motion here.
Well, I mean, if that's the best vehicle, if not, I will take direction on what that best vehicle is.
Seems like a pretty big motion for I don't know. This is my
Well, that's what
my
we're
first-
discussing right now, right? Like, we're discussing something big, and I just don't, like, we're gonna discuss it, but are we gonna get to the root issue of it? Are we gonna leave out of here with, I just wanna know what the next step is. That's why I'm trying to provide that next step, which I hope would be the department could look internally for the dollars it needs to hire its folks without having to fire people.
Go ahead.
It's a report back, right? I mean, it's not actually changing any of the numbers. I mean, I'm comfortable with it in terms of, you're asking them to look internally to see if there's any savings, and if so, to suggest them to the department. Now, they may not be able to find any internal savings, but you're saying it doesn't hurt to ask.
Savings are like restructuring, like, if they make a restructuring, they can move money, then as well, report back on those things.
Which I imagine they're going through that analysis all the time, but to daylight it, I think it's fine. I'm happy to, the chair is okay with that. I'm happy to second that as a report back.
Okay. All right. So you seconding that?
I'll second that.
Okay. I think we also need to hear from the CAO before the next FSR on where we are with this new funding source that's going to pay for the additional officers. And if that new funding source doesn't materialize, then we need to have a conversation with the department and the CAO's office and the mayor's office about what that looks like then, so that we don't blow through the budget. Okay? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see, next.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
would you like to take
I'm
a
sorry?
vote on the amending motion? Madam Chair, would you like to take a vote on the amending motion?
Can we do it at the end?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. Next, we're going to hear from LAFD. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good morning. I mean, whatever the afternoon. You want to introduce yourselves?
Emilio Rodriguez, Administrative Services Bureau, Fire Department.
Joe Everett, Chief Deputy, Administrative Operations.
Thank you. I see in the FSR that there are $2.5 million in sworn bonuses that were unbudgeted for. Who are these bonuses for, and why weren't they budgeted?
So speaking to that deficit, the most significant bonuses behind the shortfall include a rescue ambulance bonus, which pays $2.50 an hour for members who work on ALS and BLS ambulances outside of paramedics. Secondary to that was a separate bonus for members who work on involuntary overtime on certain holidays or days of importance. The sworn MOUs, and these include 23 and 22, were approved after proposed budgets were finalized last year, November 2024. So essentially, our request could not include every possible salary account impacted by the MOU approvals. These bonuses are paid from a separate account than sworn salaries, which carries a much smaller base funding level. So timing of approvals aside, it's also difficult to make projections from new bonuses without having history of expenditure data behind those bonuses. So now that we're 3 months into expenditures, we have a better idea of year-end projections than when those bonuses first took effect.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that thorough answer. Colleagues, questions for LAFD? No, okay, thank you so much. Sorry you were here so long for such a short.
No worries, thank
question.
you. Thank you.
Next, we're gonna go to LADOT. I'm gonna hand it to Councilmember Blumenfield for questions.
Sorry for making fire wait so long for such a short question. We'll be sorry for transportation for so long for a short question.
Do it tomorrow.
Yeah. And DOT and Streets LA could be the same time. Madam Chair, DOT and Streets LA could be the same time. It's really the same question.
Okay,
for both of
great.
them.
Streets LA want to come to the table too?
And while they're coming up, the basic question is, how many miles of streets have we resurfaced so far this fiscal year? And then, is it correct that we've interpreted Measure HLA as applying only to full resurfacing and not for large asphalt repairs? And I obviously raised this question to raise the issue, and wanted to get your takes on this and where we're going with this.
Good afternoon. Rose Karagizian with Bureau of Street Services. So in terms of the resurfacing program, let me give you the metrics. That is what you're asking for, correct? So let me.
I couldn't hear you. Say that again. And a similar question to the same kind of thing is, how many miles of HLA implementing bike lanes or other infrastructures have been installed this year, if any?
So these are not HLA, but these are the metrics for street services. So in terms of resurfacing, slurry and concrete panels, we have 562 lane miles that we're planning on completing this year, and we've completed 165. In terms of large asphalt repairs, the plan is for 1,000 sites to be completed, and we have completed 327 sites as of last month, and that number will continue to go up.
Right, and are we talking about not slurry, but resurfacing, actual resurfacing?
The resurfacing program, we are planning on doing that in the last month of the fiscal year. At this point, we have not done any resurfacing projects.
Could you repeat that? You were saying you've done no resurfacing yet. You're going to do that in the last month of the year.
Correct.
But
So
you
that's-
have done a certain amount of slurry.
Correct. So 164 lane miles of slurry, as well as 327 sites for large asphalt repairs. So since we've pivoted to the large asphalt repairs, we have already completed 327 sites. And in terms of the lane miles, that is so that was as of last month. So as of now, like I said, this is a moving target. So the number of sites have gone up to 435 already as of this month, because it's been a month since our last report, and that's close to about 32 lane miles.
So the concern, of course, is I know it's budget, and this is not pointing fingers at anybody, but that we haven't done any actual resurfacing this year, just the slurry and the lane miles from the asphalt repair, which is understandable given our budget, but problematic. If this is the new normal, we can't survive this way as a city. Even if we do a few miles in the last month, I'm not sure why we're pushing it to the last month, but that's concerning. And then I also wanted to understand the relationship with HLA. So does HLA only apply to the full resurfacing, or when we do these other slurries or asphalt repair, is there any HLA requirements?
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Min, Assistant General Manager at the Department of Transportation. As far as I understand, it only applies to full resurfacing. Slurry and large asphalt repairs wouldn't be a trigger for HLA requirements.
Okay. So putting by the transitive property, we have not done any, since we haven't done any resurfacing, we haven't done any HLA mandated bike lanes or other infrastructure this year yet either. Is that accurate?
I believe that's accurate. We'll double check, but I don't believe we've done any actual HLA related bike lanes or infrastructure this year.
Right, which is also concerning in terms of how we go about this. And I realize a lot of this is a budget issue, and that we don't have the budget that we need. But I raise these questions because it's just not sustainable. Like, we have to do resurfacing, and we have to do the HLA improvements, the bike lanes and the infrastructure. So I feel like since the last budget, we've sort of been limping along, but given that we're not seeing new funds come in, I don't understand how we're going to turn this around. And I raise this as a red flag. Not that I have the answer to it, but I do want to see it turned around. I do want us to have resurfacing. If you all have any insights of if I'm reading this wrong, or if there is light at the end of the tunnel, please enlighten me.
Councilmember Blumenfield?
Yep.
And team, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that the reason why we can't do resurfacing as quickly as we would like to is because per the city attorney, we have to do the ramps before. And so we can't resurface until we do the ramps, but we are very delayed on doing the ramps because we don't have enough ramp teams. And so it's like one bottleneck leads to another delay, leads to another delay, but that's one of the reasons why resurfacing can't happen at a more regular speed.
Right, but that's why we're in this.
Yes.
In this problem here,
Yes.
because we have to do the ramps, we have to do the
Yes.
HLA stuff, and we sort of stick our head in the sand by just doing slurry and, you know, large asphalt repair and sort of avoid these other requirements, but I raise it in this episode because it's not a sustainable strategy. It's a head in the sand strategy, waiting for more money, but I don't see any more money on the horizon, so we have to figure something out.
Okay, any more questions for DOT and street services? Okay, thank you. Next up, BSS. Mr. Blumenfield, this is another one that you wanted.
No, I didn't call
No? Who wanted BSS?
We just did streets LA. We did streets LA.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm tired. Personnel. No, we're going to skip that. Or you want to do it?
I offered to allow our personnel director to go, but now that you've stayed, why don't you come on up real quickly? Because we will see each other tomorrow morning, first thing in the morning. But I wanted to just go back over the furlough EAA issue.
Yeah.
So my sense is that we have two buckets. One is with the 600 employees who were in sub-authorities, and now less than half of those are in sub-authorities. One of those buckets dealt with the EAA offer, or the coalition offer to take furloughs. And so we're going to be analyzing how well we've done on moving folks, and then there'll be a furlough calculation. The other bucket is the PPL bucket, where there was an offer of the voluntary bank, and that, I believe, is going to be measured against furloughs by the personnel in the police department? Yes or no? And maybe that's not a question for you.
I do believe that it might be more of a question for CAO, but it's, yeah.
The target savings for the voluntary overtime bank was scored towards the civilians of all bargaining units within the Los Angeles Police Department. So that's in the report. The recommendation to consider slowing civilian hiring is a result of the delay in the VOB implementation, therefore not generating the target savings likely.
Right.
And that would be a way to create additional vacancies, funded vacancies, that would allow the department to absorb more of the civilian personnel within its department.
Okay. Okay, understood. So going to personnel, so we're going to keep working on, thank you so much. We're going to keep working on sort of the cut and fill and the transfer portal. But do we have prospects for those 205 civilians in the police department for either cut and fill in LAPD or transfers into other specially funded or proprietarily funded departments?
I believe there are options. We are working with the departments very closely. We've met with LAPD today. We have the road show that the personnel department will be putting on in conjunction with labor, supported by departments, over the next 2 months to ensure that departments or individuals within departments who are at risk of potential layoff or who are in those substitute authorities are aware of what their individual options are based on their status, their history, the classifications that they have status in historically. And so we will work with each individual group. There is, I don't know that there is a solution for every single individual within the LAPD, but we will continue to work with the department and the civilian workforce to find the best options that we can. We'll have more information, certainly, of course, over the next 8 weeks or so.
Thank you. And in as much as there are not solutions for those individuals or for those positions, because we know it's not about individuals, we'll have the whole cascade and the bouncing and all that stuff that'll happen on the layoffs. But if those roles are not covered, it's highly likely, I would imagine it's likely that those roles, the duties that are being performed after the first of the year will be performed by police officers.
It's possible. I mean, that will be a decision made by the LAPD about how they complete the work that needs to be done, that has always needed to be done, but that now will have less staff assigned to the classifications that were supposed to be doing that work, certainly.
So this becomes the perpetual problem in a sworn department where there are non-sworn functions that have to be filled. If they have to be filled, and if they aren't filled by civilians, they're going to be filled by somebody, and that somebody may be a sworn position, which has just the opposite effect that we're trying to perform by having officers out in the field.
I would agree with that, yes.
All right, thanks. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
See you in the morning.
Okay, any other questions for personnel? I guess not. Okay. Any other questions, discussion, anything else we didn't cover? All right, seeing none, I have the following amendments. Number 1, reappropriate $2,184,037 from the unappropriated balance equipment expenses alterations and improvements account into the same account and in the same amount that existed on June 30th, 2025. 2, reappropriate $775,000 from the unappropriated balance elected officials transition expenses account into the same account and in the same amount that existed on June 30th, 2025. And can I get a second on those? Thank you very much, Mr. McCosker and Ms. Hernandez. We also have Councilwoman Hernandez's amendment to LAPD, which we need to vote on, which is instruct LAPD to report back to CAO on identified savings or proposed restructuring and direct CAO to reallocate those dollars to deficits within the department. Mr. Clerk, can we vote on these 2 amendments, please?
Another amendment to the FSR?
To report on that.
Oh, to report on. I'm sorry.
Is this the time to bring it up or after? It's a technical amendment for the FSR.
Okay. Have we all looked at this? Yes. Okay. Do you want to, it's been circulated. Mr. Clerk, do you need us to read this? Or do you want to read the additional amendment in?
If you like, yes.
And do you want us to vote on these one by one, or do you want us to vote on this as a package?
If there are no objections, they can all be voted at once.
Okay, great. You want to read it?
Yes, Madam Chair. The additional instruction for item 1 in today's FSR is to transfer and appropriate $1,861,609 from the Measure M Local Return Fund number 59C, Department 94, account number 94CV as in Victor, B as in Brown, to sidewalk repair to the following accounts and in the amount specified within the Bureau of Street Services Fund number 100, Department 86 for the Bureau of Engineering Sidewalk Repair Program. account number 001010, salaries general, in the amount of $200,000. Account number 001090, salaries overtime, $1,012,609. Account number 001190, hiring hall overtime, in the amount of $450,000. Account number 003090, field equipment expense, in the amount of $47,000. Account number 004430, uniforms, $2,000. And account number 006020, operating supplies, in the amount of $150,000. I further move that the Bureau of Street Services be authorized to make any technical corrections or clarifications to the above fund transfer instructions in order to effectuate the intent of this motion. And I believe there's also an amendment to the first financial status report, which is...
Thank you. We have determined during the course of the meeting that the amendment that we wanted to introduce, we can handle that through our technical authority, so we would like to retract our request for that amendment. So, thank you.
Okay. All right. And I just want to clarify, when I read Councilwoman Hernandez's first amendment regarding LAPD, that this is a report back. So instruct LAPD to report back to the CAO on identified savings or proposed restructuring, and direct CAO to report back on potential reallocations of those dollars to deficits within the department. Okay? Yes? Okay. Yes. Mr. Clerk, can we please vote on these amendments?
Yes, Madam Chair. Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Yes.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Councilmember Hutt.
Yes.
Councilmember McCosker.
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Yes.
5 ayes, item 1 is approved as amended.
Great. Do we need to vote on the underlying item now, or did we just do that?
That would be fine, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
great. So, colleagues, I move that we approve the CAO's recommendations as amended, and I want to affirm what Mr. Zabo highlighted as instructions to the city's general managers in items 5 and 6 on page 22 of this FSR, to refrain from reserve fund loans and interim budget appropriations, and to retain the projected vacation savings, respectively. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Yes.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Aye.
Councilmember Hutt.
Yes.
Councilmember McCosker.
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Yes.
5 ayes, item is approved.
Thank you so much. We're going to move now to item 5. Colleagues, this is a separate vote item called by Councilwoman Hernandez. I recommend that we concur with the Homelessness and Housing Committee and approve the LAPD recommendations as amended. Is there anything you want to say on that, Councilwoman Hernandez, or are you good?
I'm good.
Okay, great. Mr. Bencoma, will you please call the roll, tally the votes?
Yes, Madam Chair. Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Yes.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Councilmember Hutt.
Yes.
Councilmember McCosker.
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Yes.
5
Oh, wait,
ayes.
no. Wait, what? No, sorry. Sorry. It's a no.
No takebacks.
No.
Thank you. 4 ayes, 1 no. This item is approved.
Thank you so much. So colleagues, as we wrap up the committee's consideration of this first FSR for 25-26, I want to take a moment to thank Patty Huber. As I understand, this will be the last of the many FSRs that you helped to create over decades with the office. Patty, thank you so much for all your expertise and dedication and years of work, and we wish you well, with a little bit of jealousy as you move into retirement. Colleagues, I think on behalf of all of us, say we really are grateful for your work, Ms. Huber, so thank you so much. Colleagues, we're going to move now to item 6, which was called special by Mr. McCosker.
Was it? No, it wasn't. Was it?
You want us to just vote on this?
Oh, I was going to ask about the proprietary departments, that's right.
Okay, Mr. Wexler, would you please read the item?
Yes, thank you.
Item 6.
Thank you.
Motion Hutt Soto Martinez relative to authorizing city departments and bureaus to sell goods they produce.
Okay. So, are you doing it, Jacob?
I
speaking
did,
to it?
sir. I'm happy to do it again if that's your wish.
No, no, no. Who's answering the question?
Oh. As this is a motion, the CEO does not have a report on this yet. I think the motion requests or instructs us to come back with a report, but we'll
begin that once council
So
instructs
colleagues, I
us
just
to do
want to
that.
know whether the proprietaries are able to pay this into the general fund. Whether the whether we can tap the proprietaries to pay into the general fund. Yeah. And by proprietaries, I mean the port, but there's a couple others too. So if we could just add that,
To the report back.
yeah, to the report back.
Do
Thank
you
you.
need us to, is that enough right there?
But I can make sure that the staff who works on it is aware of that additional instruction.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we need to vote on that, or?
Yes, Madam Chair. Councilmember Yaroslavsky.
Yes.
Councilmember Bloomfield.
Bluefield, aye.
Councilmember Hutt.
Yes.
Councilmember McCosker.
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Yes.
5 ayes, this item is approved.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, we've concluded all of our open